Okay, 3, 2, and 1. Hi, I'm Wyatt Cash at Scoop News Group, and today we want to take a look at how advances in technology are helping federal agencies modernize their data centers and make them function more effectively in today's multi-cloud environment. Joining us to talk about that today are Sonny Bhagowalia, Acting Assistant Commissioner for Information and Technology and also CIO at U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and Mahtab Emdadi, Regional Sales Director at Dell Technologies. Sonny and Mahtab, thank you for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, Sonny, I'd like to start with you. I know you've played a key role in shaping the federal government's data center consolidation and cloud initiatives over the years. From your perspective now at CBP, give us a sense for the scope of CBP's data center operations today and how they support CBP's mission.
Well, thank you, Wyatt. I think it seems like, a decade ago, and I think it was a decade ago, actually, when we started this whole thing called FDCCI under Vivek Kundra, and as I was Interior CIO at the time, and he'd come up with this idea as to, hey, listen, we need to start consolidating some of the data centers, and really, it was mainly for more efficiency and effectiveness of how IT is provided, because there was a lot of different folks providing different, data services at the time. And at that time, I think he also, I think after I left Interior, I was also helping him do that at GSA as the Deputy Associate Administrator, trying to come up with government-wide sort of policies that he was implementing, which is what became FDCCI. And 40% reduction of data centers at the time. But it was more about consolidation of that. And I think at that time, the idea was, hey, listen, power efficiency, but also, a lot of stuff at how we can do better security at the time, but also provide better data services in a more timely manner for the mission. Since then, I think coming to now 10 years forward, I've done another 3 or 4 CIO roles, and then 3 CIO roles. And each one of these, I've had a chance to see how data centers play such a big role in our in providing the mission that we provide. At CBP, it's a $16 billion agency, and we spend about $1.8 billion in IT alone. But the mission is so big in terms of what we do in safeguarding America, and in terms of anything we do in border or trade, or passenger processing, or just everything that we do is just enormous. So data centers, the data center plays a very big role in terms of what we provide, in terms of some of these high value assets and a lot of the other capabilities that we have at a very resilient data center that provides 24/7 operations, at the speed of mission. So I think from that standpoint, data center is, still a very important aspect of our strategy. But on the other hand, we've also got cloud, so that things that are a little bit easier and more commercial off the shelf that can still support the mission and have more redundancy and resiliency and speed of operation in terms of how we can deploy that for the mission. Because keep in mind that we are out there in a lot of remote locations across protecting borders and also with folks at ports of entry, 300 plus ports of entry. So with that, the officers need everything on their fingertips. And so that information, as they get that information, it is all coming back from, if you would, from a data center or a data center cloud operation. So I think with that in mind, there's clearly a lot that data centers provide, but also what is done with the cloud. So I think those two are hybrid sort of scenarios, and CBP uses both scenarios to support our mission.
Well, I know you talk about a lot of data, and particularly with all that you're doing with surveillance, all the your folks in the field. What I'd like to ask next is, how is the need for digital transformation driving your data centers and application modernization strategy? And what are some examples of how you're kind of breathing new life into CBP's data centers?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, as we have, even on the cloud, migrating to the cloud, we had a number of, 270 or so mission apps that we need to migrate to the cloud, and we were supposed to migrate about 60 or so. We've actually migrated 90. But those are sort of the easy to medium sort of apps that we can really migrate up and then use that in the cloud. And then we've set up resiliency so that we have a fully load balance scenario that can always keep operations going. But meanwhile, a lot of the other, but we also have a sort of a concomitant strategy, I guess, or a balanced strategy with keeping our data centers going, because all the higher, most important apps that are still going to take a while to migrate to the cloud, still, the data centers are perfect in terms of how we provide those services in a very reliable and safe and secure manner. And so with that, our strategy is to keep that going, refactor on-premise mission essential apps so that we can depend on some of that infrastructure. We have a data operations team that support these on a regular basis. And again, some of these operations, we process over almost 40 billion transactions a day in some areas. Our data center is looking at almost 2 million system alerts annually, thousands of alerts daily, processing so much information. So it's a 24/7 operation that really requires us to really keep this thing on a global basis, because one thing, we are the largest law enforcement agency in the United States, but we are one of the largest in the world. So I think this data center operations has to really keep up with identifying any potential issues, take proactive measures to make sure service disruption never happens. Because keep in mind that, of course, when travel was really going on, I mean, if something happens at an airport or if it was happening somewhere else on a port of entry or a border, you need instantaneous access. So you can just imagine this is also nearly real time in terms of what we have to do to keep the mission going. So I think our journey is pretty much leveraging capacity, keeping sure the technology that we have in the data center upgraded with this hybrid strategy of on-premise and also cloud. And it's really developing new critical technology so that these mission apps that we do, we've got tons of sort of concurrent teams doing mission apps that deliver capability in an agile SDLC or software development lifecycle. Every 2 weeks, we're rolling stuff out, and we've got many teams that I've got 4 application directors actually, out of 8 that just are doing application development. And so this has a synergy, if you would. I have used synergy. I haven't used synergy in such a long time. So synergy, and I'll even throw in symbiosis. I don't know. So I think with our mission teams that really require the stuff, because, at the end of the day, what do people need on their fingertips? Those mobile phones also need apps, and they need access to data. So it's all about data. It's really, and we have petabytes of data that we have to, sort out and make sure that it's all available and secure. And so these data center efforts and the cloud efforts all sort of work together in a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and also this on-prem data center with cloud strategy that we're using, this hybrid approach to make sure data is secure but available for the mission. So the key is we operate at the speed of mission, and we operate at the speed of operations. So when we are doing that operation is 24/7, and it is global, and it is literally like I guess a few Fortune companies working all in one in government. So government has a big mission. And anyway, I can go in more detail if you like, but we've done a lot of things in this area, and we were, I believe, one of the first to actually even do mainframe as a service into the cloud. And our goal is some point to migrate a lot of the applications to the cloud. But meanwhile, the data center plays a big role, and it's one of those things that we are thankful for, that it's steady. We've consolidated that into the data center that we have, and we also are mindful of the resiliency that kind of goes with that. So let me stop there, and Wyatt, if there's something else that you want to probe, we can talk about.
Sure. Well, let's bring Mahtab into the conversation here. Mahtab, from your perspective, what's changing in the technology space to help agencies get greater performance and return from their federal data centers? And what do you see going on at CBP, for example, what they're doing that other agencies might learn from?
Sure. Yeah. Why? It's a great question. And I couldn't agree more with Sonny. It is a multi-cloud world. And as digital transformation is accelerating, the need for a robust data center and cloud architecture is just, it's so necessary. And, we've all seen our customers go through this shift of, their multi-cloud and their cloud journey, and they've all kind of landed in the same place where, the need for data center and public cloud and the need for them to be able to interoperate, it's what they need in order to transform. And that's for various reasons, like Sonny said, some applications, they want to keep their crown jewels on-prem. And for some reasons, such as cost and security, that's the factor that's going into that. And other times it's because they haven't gotten around to refactoring those applications to push them to the public cloud yet. So for those reasons, customers like CBP are modernizing their data centers and making that a priority. And the latest trends and ones that we're seeing to kind of accelerate this journey that I see CBP doing and various other customers is, as they're modernizing, they're keeping kind of 4 tenets in mind. And that is flash, scale out, software defined, and cloud enabled. And I'll kind of go through those really quickly. I think flash is pretty simple to understand because of the density of flash drives. It's a no-brainer when it comes to cost and environmental. So that's kind of first and foremost. The second one is scale out. And that's the idea of being able to kind of start small with these modular building blocks of data center and be able to kind of scale out in smaller increments over time while keeping the management of it simple and consistent. So, the customers that were buying, large SAN equipment and, investing that big CapEx into it, every 3 to 4 years, they really demanded from the industry, to move away from that and to be able to kind of start incrementally growing as they need. So that's a big driving requirement is to have a scale out architecture. The third one is really software defined. And as we know, the whole world is essentially being controlled by software, and same in the data center. You really want to be able to abstract the intelligence of your data center into software. And that gives you several different benefits. For one, it allows you choice in terms of hardware vendors. Two, it allows a lot of the data center tasks to be automated. So you can kind of shift your workforce more towards building net new services versus operating a complex data center. You allow the software to take care of that. And then, the fourth tenet, which most customers are demanding, is to have cloud enabled infrastructure, which essentially once you have software defined infrastructure, you're able to extend that capability out to the public cloud. So a lot of customers are, using this for several different use cases, such as being able to burst out to the cloud, when they're having higher, activity, or they're tiering their data to the cloud or backing up to the cloud. But once you have a software defined infrastructure on-prem, you can take that same capability and just plant it on any IaaS and infrastructure you want. On-prem, in the cloud, it gives you that flexibility and choice. So those are kind of the 4 main characteristics that we're seeing customers, look at when they're modernizing. And the fastest way to make sure that you encapsulate all 4 is to, do hyper-converged architecture as you're modernizing, because hyper-converged really contains all of those in one. So the aspect of hyper-converged is essentially there's no more 3-tier monolith rigid system. So the idea of having compute, storage, and network as separate devices and managing them separately has kind of transformed into having a single appliance with compute, storage, and network, which you can start small with and grow over time. And again, it gives you that easy, turnkey end-to-end system that you can put in your data center. And it's a very standard product that you can kind of layer on standard processes into, which you can package into very consumable ways. And you can deploy the whole system as one over the course of its lifetime. So in order, what that produces, again, more secure and reliable data centers, because as you know, a lot of outages are caused by not having code, that's current. But, when you have an end-to-end appliance model, all of those software, it's all contained in one, and all of that software, it's upgraded automatically, throughout its life cycle. So you're not constantly putting your team to work trying to upgrade different components to your data center. It's intelligent, it upgrades itself, and it's all in one. So those are kind of the 4 tenets in modern architectures, and just the easiest way to get all 4 of them is to kind of lean into hyper-converged technologies. And most all vendors, have their own flavor of HCI. So, Sonny's organization has leaned in heavily into it, and many others, and it's really been helpful as they kind of start transforming their data centers.
Well, that all makes a lot of sense. Sonny, so looking ahead over the next year or two, what is left on your planning docket in the way of modernizing your data center so that you can indeed get that right balance and overall performance that CBP needs?
Yeah, no, first of all, I think Mahtab said it so eloquently, the tenants in terms of how they're viewing the world. And as an engineer, I certainly appreciate that, in terms of, as we're engineering execs now, we just have to make that balance in terms of, infrastructure and approach. But at the end of the day, it's really about data. And applications, I think those are really, really key for the mission, as I mentioned. So we have roughly, as I mentioned, we have this hybrid strategy of on-premise data centers, and they're working really well. Plus, we have the cloud as well, the hybrid cloud. So a third of them have gone to the cloud, the apps have gone to the cloud, and then 2/3 remain. And as it gets more difficult, because these are some of the high-value assets that really run the mission of the country, we're going to keep that cloud strategy going. And as we're saying, we're breathing life into those government data centers. But also even the cloud services, they're being provided in someone else's data centers, except that we're just getting it as a service and a utility. So I think, first of all, the goal is to get more applications into the cloud. So in the next 2 years, but meanwhile, there are a few factors that we need to consider, because again, it's all about the data. We have to obviously find ways that we can deliver this data more efficiently across this application system to reduce cost. But most importantly, it's about mission, increase effectiveness and efficiency of the mission. So data migration, developing the standardized procedures and reusable services, database conversion, we're trying to get to new standards that facilitate data portability and interoperability, data integration so that we're modernizing through sort of like even like NoSQL efficient data strategy by adopting some new data architectures. We're using other kinds of databases like graph databases that connect things together and allow us to see relationships very quickly. We have data quality and governance, so that, I had to throw in the word governance, but this is practical governance and pragmatic governance at the speed of operation. So implement tools so that we can have master data and reference data management. And then our SecDevOps, I had to throw that in there. SecDevOps is how you develop software and make sure that we are continuously integrating and delivering what they call a CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, so that we can manage this data across multiple environments. And so we've done a lot in data modernization. We even have come up with API gateways, application programming interface gateways, so that we can reduce dependence on legacy tools, which we currently use, so that you can then interface better with even business to business applications, so that we can improve resiliency and operating capability. So I think the broad themes are, we will keep the data center going until we can get all the harder apps and the more mission critical and the things that are really, there's no commercial off the shelf software that kind of, says, hey, can you get one of these that sort of runs this mission for the country? These are very, very big, very complex apps, so they're going to take a while. But we are seeing a lot of success because we're seeing sort of automation, we're seeing self-service, we're doing technology business management, TBM, remember that? So we're actually doing TBM where we can start seeing cost models to kind of see what the progress would be. And this hybrid approach allows us an orchestration between on-premise and third-party cloud services. And we're one of the first agencies that migrated mainframe as a service to the cloud. So that has allowed us to inject some savings and transform the way we do business. But on the other hand, then there's always the law of entropy, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. So there's other things that we got to spend time on, because there's so much of other mission, as you and I talked about just before this, is that, hey, the mission continues. There's always new things that we got to deal with. There's new world events that force us to, work this or that. So the mission changes continuously, and IT has to always adapt to make sure. So I think we're also finding that cloud practices and on-prem data center practices, they're managed independently, but the teams are also learning from each other. So they're sharing best practices in O&M. And we're finding that we're getting better and better. In fact, I have daily operations meetings daily that I check everything. And even as CIO, we got to kind of double check, make sure things are working well. And our teams are fantastic. This is probably one of the best teams I've ever led in terms of what they do, because just of sheer scale and depth and breadth and complexity of the operation. But also, I think lastly, I'll just say that it's really important to look at security. It's also really important to make sure that you know that you can manage. So we have configuration management to make sure that you also maintain the legacy, current, and future entities. So I think the overall prognosis is that I see a bright future where it doesn't have to be one or the other. So we are definitely, data centers are still around, but they're more consolidated, they're more secure, they're more reliable. There's more power efficiency that we've got. In fact, we even have power resiliency that we've done on the data center so that there's more uptime in those areas. Meanwhile, concurrently, we also have a cloud strategy that is going out there as the migrations occur. So with the combination of this strategy, we have a very load balanced and a very sort of mission focused strategy that we've implemented. And at the end of the day, it's all about the mission. So that's what we're doing to safeguard America. And again, really, really proud of the team. And I think newer technologies are coming in all the time, and we're integrating that. We've robotic process automation, AI, ML, all these other things that people talk about, which I can talk about it in detail at any point. But I'll just say all of those at the end of the day is really facilitating data. And data is still required in data centers, and data is still required in the cloud. And how we secure it across the ITIRM lifecycle is what CIOs do. So the good news is, I guess we're in business for a while, so job prospects seem good, I guess. That's what I think. Thank you.
Well, finally, we just have a couple minutes left. The pandemic has changed the budget outlook and assumptions for most agencies for a variety of reasons. Mahtab, first, what should agencies be aware of from industry going forward regarding maybe new strategies or opportunities to really get the most out of their data center investments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that, with this recent, COVID, it did present an opportunity for government agencies to leverage that stimulus funding to modernize. So I think that's definitely one strategy, is to leverage these events as natural triggers to, start your modernization. And I think, I always tell my customers, in order to kind of pave the way from the new, you have to squeeze the legacy. So sometimes that requires taking on some risks. Sometimes that requires, making sure that your team understands the need for it. But you really have to kind of squeeze the life out of the old and breathe life into the new. And I think these, stimulus events allow us to naturally do that. And I think from an industry perspective, we understand that budgets aren't growing, and definitely workforce isn't growing. So we have come up with very flexible consumption methods that are very similar to cloud providers, where it's a pay-as-you-go type of model, where you can kind of scale up, scale down. You can have it fully managed if you prefer, if you're challenged with workforce, or you can manage it yourself and just kind of pay as you use. So I think by leveraging those different flexible consumption models, and also just making sure that you take advantage of these natural catalysts, those two put together can really help you launch your transformation, which is exciting.
Terrific. And Sonny, if you had one practical lesson to share just very briefly, what would you offer to other federal CIOs about, again, how to get maybe the most out of their data center investments over the next couple of years?
I would say plan ahead, plan the work the plan. So plan for hybrid operating models, on-prem and cloud, develop a plan to maintain on-premise operations if a hybrid setup will take some time, create a plan for end-to-end monitoring, and pursue strategic accreditation on the ATOs for cybersecurity so that you have that all in place. And I think the direct actions is, don't forget acquisition. Acquisition is a team sport. It takes a while. Acquisition is a life cycle. Procurement is just one step in an acquisition process. Acquisition requires many other things. So service level agreements, licensing, all that other mundane stuff, but it's really important. And it really, oddly enough, takes a lot of our time. And I think at the end of the day, it's also making network across the key stakeholders. And let me just say, it also means there's industry government partnerships. And I know there's obviously a very contractual sort of relationship here, but engage with them regularly. Mahtab and I, we talk in terms of quarterly business reviews of what the company and how they support our environment. So we do monthly or quarterly with all the vendors and make sure that, whatever we're doing, we can together look at it, because we want to make this a win-win proposition. And I think that's really the key to success, because, hey, it's one life here. Why not enjoy it and just do the best you can to keep the mission going? And to do that, you have to have trusted partnerships and minimize drama. So I think that's my take on this whole thing.
Well, that's a great point to end on. Well, Sonny, Bhagowalia, and Mahtab, Emdadi, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your insights and lessons learned about modernizing today's federal data centers and really how to get the most out of them for the American public. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Be safe and well. Thanks.
Bye, all.
Great. So 3, 2, and 1. Okay, that went well. 1 second. I'm going to turn off the recording button.